Hi everybody, it's the show with Ron. I'm Ron, and I had to get this video out. We've had so much big news in the last few weeks. Unprecedented, amazing political stuff. When I started this channel last fall to cover this, I could see how there weird things were happening, how the media was kind of protecting the sitting president. I don't have anything against him, but it was clear from outside the United States, where we didn't have a lot of like CNN or MSNBC, New York Times, these news. I'm not sure if they were really doing their job, because they were trying to present this picture that Biden was in perfect health. He was just a few years older than Trump, so that means if Trump was okay to run, he was okay to run. But we've had, which we probably could say, a merciful situation where Biden has stepped aside. You see, after the debate, which I didn't think was so terrible. And I'm not itching my face because I'm lying. I don't know why I did that. I honestly don't think it was such a terrible performance by him, because I was outside of the U.S. most of the time for the last few years, and I know exactly what Biden is like without the interference of the U.S. media to tell me otherwise. As countries and people in the rest of the world already kind of know that perhaps the presidency, if not on autopilot, is being controlled by backstage actors, the assistants of other people in the party, in the government. So here we are. And Harris is now the nominee, the vice president. Now, and this is a person, certainly the first 2 years, perhaps even 3 years of the Biden administration, the media, which I was just saying was helping out the Democrats, really went after her for many, many different things. Like there was a bit, like she's too difficult to work with, and she can't keep a chief of staff, or her staff turnover is great. And then there's all those videos of her sort of probably too casual manner of speaking, her tittering laughter. I've heard her recently. It seems like she's cleaned that up. It could be the liberal press initially did not, like her or went after her, because, she was a very, very tough prosecutor in California, almost like you would, if a Republican were as tough a prosecutor as she was, with some of the opinions that she had at the time, they would be all over him for perhaps being even racist. But so I don't think we should immediately say this is a far left winger, even though she might express some of those views, because her history is certainly as a law and order candidate. And this is what I've talked about for a long time, many, many months. If you were on the channel, we talked about this. The Biden withdrawal injects uncertainty into wars, trade dispute, other foreign policy challenges, and Trump's reelection campaign. Because with Biden, we have a known quantity. Even if he's not really day to day running the government, it's a known quantity. So we can calculate that. The markets can calculate that. The Trump campaign, after the debates, I'm sure they would have been thrilled if Biden stayed in the race, because they knew what they were up against. With Harris coming in as the nominee, you never know if she's cleaned up her speaking act, if she can get on the debate stage with Trump. Biden certainly was never going to have another debate with Trump. That first debate sealed it. But now they've got somebody who can debate Trump. And this interjects uncertainty in a lot of different areas. And there's mention in this article and other articles about, the international situation. Certainly, even before the debates, the U.S. president had been scoffed at by many foreign powers, even though during the debate they kept saying everything was better than ever. That's the difficult thing when you're a sitting incumbent. To reelect, you got to have some things you want to do, but at the same time, you've got to say, I already did a great job and things are wonderful. So it's a tough road to hoe for somebody who's already in power. And we talked quite a lot about this. Again, another unprecedented situation, kind of the unraveling of the world order, where we have countries seeing both maybe a weakness in U.S. foreign policy and unwillingness for the U.S. government to spend a lot more overseas, a lot of unrest in the United States against U.S. policy positions. For instance, in the war between Israel and Hamas. So we have Russia taking advantage of the situation to invade Ukraine. We have Iran taking advantage of the situation by spurring Hamas to go take hostages with Israel, and there are other proxies in the region. The Houthis in Yemen disrupting shipping in the Suez Canal, and Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. They took advantage of that. China also very openly saber rattling and say they're going to take back Taiwan, do things to Taiwan. All the fighting and fussing in the South China Seas, almost coming to war with the Philippines at some point. I heard the other day they reached a tentative agreement, but China's become very, very aggressive. And now there are reasons countries want to do that. China is sort of very much hemmed into a land empire, and they're very much vulnerable to all the countries that surround them cutting off their shipping, cutting off their oil supplies. A very, very vulnerable position. I think there are some good videos on YouTube that describe this. They have to feel both oil-wise, energy-wise, trade-wise, and resource-wise, such as water, that they're in a vulnerable position. And so this may be a great time to come out and make a move. And we even have other countries, Venezuela down there, that they saw all this and they said, hey, let's have a vote and let's just take over a neighboring country that we want. Again, this is because the U.S., that has hundreds of bases overseas, 100, and not just giving money to other countries, but our own soldiers in other countries, and being in military activities all around the world. The United States, like it or not, runs it's not just that they're the international police, they're running the whole world. Certainly the European countries, when Russia invaded Ukraine, right now they're not saying, well, we can defend ourselves. They're saying, what's the U.S. going to do? You've got bases all over Europe with U.S. soldiers there. And the threat, the idea that the U.S. might not protect them from what's going on is scary. I mean, and that's for people who say the U.S. is not running the world or is not the World Cup. They clearly are, and these circumstances show it. Here we have the final days of the Biden and how his inner circle blew it. The article really doesn't explain this. It just kind of is a timeline of stuff that's happening. This article is very much from a U.S. perspective, as if the way that the Biden's handlers presented him or allowed himself to be presented, the way they set up the debate that ended up favoring Trump. They thought it was going to favor Biden. It all turned on Biden, and that's suddenly people realized he couldn't do it. But the reality for most, even Americans, is they knew that for a long time. They knew Biden was sort of holding on, and the argument was made that, well, he's already there. He's already the president. He has that dignity, and he's better than Trump, who is Hitler, etc., etc. And so we have Harris wins enough support to clinch Democratic nomination. She's very happy. We've talked about this in the past. This another thing that exposes the nature of the U.S. primaries. You realize, how could she have the nomination? Nobody voted for her. They voted for Biden in all the primaries. And so what? How did that happen? Well, it's a delegate system, and in some of the past elections, in the distant past, you would get to the convention and you would have no one who would clinch the nomination, so the delegates would kind of bargain among themselves, and eventually one of the candidates would release their delegates to another candidate to vote. And in this case, we see how nobody in the everybody who cast their vote for the nominee. They can change it this easily. But that is the nature of the primaries in the United States. And we've talked about before how this year the Iowa caucus, it's always the first primary for the Republicans and Democrats, and it does give a chance to other candidates to perhaps make a showing and show they could be getting the nomination. But since it had been decided by somebody somewhere behind the scenes that Biden was going to be the guy, the Democrats changed their caucus to be later on into one of the Super Tuesdays, so it wouldn't matter, and they wouldn't let anybody else get a chance to unseat Biden. So again, you can get very cynical about it, but that is just the nature of it. I do fear that sometimes that Americans, we hear about our elections in romanticized, epic terms, a voice of the people, like CNN or one of the big news networks in the United States, in the little chyron, in the little animation at the bottom of the screen in some primary election might say voice of the people, or the people speak, or the people vote, or whatever. But people may be surprised that it just doesn't amount to much, particularly in the primaries, because of the nature of the system. Maybe they need to be more educated. That's just how these things work. Now, okay, so what Kamala Harris is doing now, she has to start to show she can speak to the public properly, and that can be in charge, that she's going to is able to debate Donald Trump. I think all of those things are sort of in process, and this is super important because before the events of Biden stepping down, pundits and the markets were assuming a Trump victory then. You have to make your best guess when you're setting these things up. And the market was looking at, well, we got this iconic photo of Trump. There seems to be a groundswell of support for him, especially in the battleground states. And we're not looking for all of the votes because most of the states are already tipped very highly to one side or another, and it's unlikely that one presidential candidate will be able to change that. It's just a few of the battleground states. Pennsylvania, what's another one? Wisconsin, I had it written down here. Michigan, even. So these are the ones that the battle is going to be fought in. Maybe Michigan might be a reason that J.D. Vance was selected as a vice presidential candidate for Trump. You already hear people saying, "Oh, they regret that J.D. Vance was selected." Blah blah blah. Again, I think this is part of the Democrats who are trying to recenter the narrative away from Trump the hero and back. They're reminding people of the January 6th insurrection and the election denialism and that sort of thing. And the media here, such as the left-leaning Atlantic, is helping out. This article very much restates again all the reasons. It is true that after a convention like the Republicans just had, Trump's support will be sky high. There's a little bump. People listen to maybe some of the speeches, so you get a little bump. So now's the time for the Democrats and the media, a lot of it that helps them out, to reset the narrative, to make sure people understand what's at stake again, and to explain all the negatives of Trump, which were sort of glossed over very well in the convention. Trump was very disciplined in the way he spoke, and even in his acceptance speech, he didn't say a lot about policy at all. He just thanked people, and he let other people say those policy things for him. And they really gave almost an impression of a conciliatory platform that the Republicans had, downplaying the anti-abortion stuff and that sort of thing. So then we get to this. Already there's a lot of screaming and shouting that this is all right-wing conspiracy, and I think it is. You see on Twitter people confidently saying a lot of crazy stuff about the situation with Biden. It's a little strange. Biden hasn't been seen in public for a number of days now, not because he's sick. The White House always would have a photographer, and if the president was not well or something, not be able to be seen in public, they would take some pictures of him and put those out there just so America's adversaries, so everyone in the world would know that someone is still at the helm, able to launch nukes if necessary, able to respond to policy crises. But it doesn't seem to have happened with Biden. I wonder if Biden is just nursing a grudge from being probably forced to step aside. There was a call, I believe he had with Kamala Harris, and she clearly is aware of the situation of Biden not being visually seen at all, even in a photo. I think she said to the crowd, "We've been talking every day." She said that to Biden on the phone, and it is a strange thing to say unless you're trying to emphasize to people that yes, he has not passed away. He's okay. He's just recovering, but. The White House, again, they really need to put out some photos of Biden to show he's sitting in a desk or sitting in a chair or recovering, because they're letting the other side keep the focus not even on Kamala Harris, but on Biden. And for so long, the Democrats have been able to keep the focus only on Trump. So they're losing the little bit of the battle by not acting. Now, could be by the time you see this, they've done something about it. But this is the latest scuttlebutt now, the strange visual absence, at least, of President Biden. And I knew this election year was going to be crazy, but I didn't know how crazy and how many unprecedented things are going to happen. Many people have to wonder if it's going to be a better situation for the Democrats if Kamala Harris becomes president before the election. If Biden resigns and steps down, if he's not fit to run for another term or even be seen in public, if the stakes are really that high, that there is a new Hitler on the horizon, I think the Democrats have toned down that sort of speech since the assassination attempt, but they certainly will need to pull out all the stops. So in this year, this election season of unprecedented things, having Biden resign and Kamala Harris take over so she can run as the sitting president, have that authority, that might be something that would benefit the Democrats. So anyway, I never knew it would be this exciting this year, but it is, and sometimes American elections are like that. So stay tuned. We'll have more context and commentary. I try to step back from the news because we don't want to get too excited about it. We don't want to go down fighting in someone else's battles. So let's put our heads together and try to understand the context and commentary, the historical things behind all this news. So the news media, what's being said on Twitter and social media doesn't get us all hyped too much. So I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.